Okay, welcome everybody. If you could please sit down. Men on this side, women on that side. Take any seat you want. There's no set seats here. Find a seat. The sooner you sit down, the sooner tzeis comes. That's not really true, right? Okay, I'm just going to start, and you'll sit down as I'm talking. And then we'll get, by the time I'm finished, and the Kollel's ready to start, everyone's going to be sitting already. Makes sense. Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you very much, Gabriel. If you've noticed already, this isn't a typical banquet, because it isn't a typical banquet. If anybody knows me a little bit, I like doing things a little bit differently. This one's just a little bit more than a little bit different. This is just an enjoyable event, an enjoyable evening, L'kavod Lag BaOmer, to celebrate the Torah, the special Torah of Lag BaOmer. Of course, next week, a week from today, we're going to be having our fundraiser. I don't want to ignore that. We do have to raise money. But I figured, instead of asking people for money first and then giving them food, why don't we just give people food first, let them feel good, and then we'll ask them for money. So next week, when we ask you for money, please give generously. I will say that this year we are looking to raise way more than we've raised in the past, $600,000. You've seen the signs. But enough about that for now. We'll talk about that later. I do have to thank a number of people for making this event possible. Literally making this event. First and foremost, you're not going to see him here necessarily. You're not going to see his name, but Vitaly Logman did an incredible job making this event happen, so thank you very much to Vitaly. Another tremendous thank you to Mrs. Delmore, who really took charge of everything here and made it happen. Of course, to Alex, who you'll get to meet through his culinary creations. Thank you to Rabbi Eli Markowitz and Moshe Goldberger for the hashgacha of this event. And the Perezes as well had a role to play. Thank you to the entire Kollel, to the Rosh Kollel, to the Rosh Chabura, to the Neshei Kollel, for creating such a Makom Torah in our community. And thank you to the community for supporting this. The theme of this evening is La'ela, going higher. We all seek to go higher in spirituality and ruchnius. My goal for this evening is, yes, number one, that you enjoy, but really more than that, I want you to walk away from this evening elevated. I want you to feel moved. I'll leave you with one short little thought, and then we'll get to the Rosh Kollel. Somebody once told me an incredible line. It said that music makes people feel feelings. Words make people think thoughts. And songs, which are the combination of words and lyrics, make people feel thoughts. When we sing tonight, when we dance tonight, I want you not just to feel the feelings of the music, but feel the thoughts of the music, feel the words of the music. Walk away not just moved, but elevated. La'ela u'la'ela. Thank you very much for coming. Please rise for Kavod HaTorah, the Rosh Kollel.
Chashiv Rabban Shlita, Chashiv Rosh Chabura, Rabbi Moshe Spire Shlita, the Nesanel, Rabbi Avigdor Goldberger Shlita, the Sky Nesanel, Rabbi Adil Ruben Shlita, both of which Rabbi Goldberger and Rabbi Crystal organized this beautiful event, and they spent many hours and weeks in preparing, and I thank them very much. And Chashiv Chavri HaKol, distinguished Chavri HaKol Shlita, and Kol HaKol HaKadosh Hazeh. You know, the 49 days between Pesach and Shavuos are designated in the year in order to anticipate the giving of Torah on Shavuos. So we count from the beginning, from Pesach, from the Zman Chayusene, time of freedom, to the giving of the Torah, to indicate that the purpose of freedom is to be free to serve Hashem. Now, the Svarim say that the 49 days of the Omer are broken into 3 parts, 3 halakim. And the third begins on Lag BaOmer. 16 days and a fraction of each third, and then the last third really starts on Lag BaOmer. And they correspond to the 3 pillars of the world. As the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, the world stands on Torah. Torah, that means Torah learning, studying. Avoda, which means serving Hashem, which specifically means in the Beis Hamikdash and with tefillah, with davening, and Gemilas Chasadim, which is kind acts to one another. The Vilna Gaon says that these 3 things really represent 3 different aspects of Yiddishkeit. In Yiddishkeit, we have Ben Adam Lamakom, things that we do to serve Hashem. Ben Adam Lachaveru, things we do to our fellow man. And the third thing is Ben Adam La'atzmo, to elevate the person himself. So he says that avoda, service in the Beis Hamikdash, davening, that is representative of all the mitzvahs that are between us and Hashem. Gemilas Chasadim represents the mitzvahs bein Adam Lachaver, between man and his fellow. Torah represents, now this here means the learning of Torah represents the elevation of a person, connecting with Hashem, being morally elevated, and it's as the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, megadalto u'meromamto al kol maasim, that a person is elevated and exalted over all things when he learns Torah. These are the 3 parts of Yiddishkeit, 3 aspects of Yiddishkeit. And the days of the Sefira represent these because Torah relates to all of these. Torah relates to our instructions of how to serve Hashem. Torah relates to our instructions how to be a better person, bein Adam L'chaver, between man and man. And Torah, the learning of Torah, beyond the instruction of what to do and how to do it, the mere learning of Torah is something that elevates us and brings us closer to Hashem. And these are the things that we concentrate on in the days of the Omer. And on Lag BaOmer, we concentrate from that time forward on the actual learning of Torah. In this past week's Parsha, Parshas Emor, the end of the Parsha gives us a description and a review of all the holidays of the year as they appear in the Torah, which begins with Pesach and then Shavuos and then Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. But there's an interesting thing that after the Torah mentions Shavuos, it seems to include something which doesn't fit into the theme of the Parsha. And that is that when you harvest your fields, so you have to leave over a portion for the poor. That's called payah, certain corners left over for the poor. And there's leket, anything that falls goes automatically to the poor. And shikha is anything that you overlook goes to the poor. In the middle of the mentioning of the holidays, this is brought in, and it's specifically brought in right after Shavuos. So the Meshech Chochmah says, why is this here? So the Meshech Chochmah says, because a person would think that it's true that we need the Torah. Shavuos is the Yontif of Torah, the holiday of Torah. Torah is to teach us those things that we wouldn't necessarily know on our own. Teach us how to relate to Hashem. But in terms of our relationship with our fellow man, do we need the Torah to teach us those things? Of course, every society understands that they have to take care of their own and provide for their own. So is Torah necessary for that? Says the Meshech Chochmah, of course Torah is necessary for that. Because without Torah, as much as we think it's natural and it's logical to help our fellow man and provide for our fellow man and be kind to our fellow man, a person can sink to the lowest of levels and even do atrocities to his fellow man. If push comes to shove and he feels it's necessary, he will rationalize it. The only thing that keeps a person straight and that he doesn't veer from that which is the correct path is when he knows that the Torah says this and he has yiras Hashem, he has fear of Hashem, then he will stick to the the right path. But otherwise, even though it's logical, it would seem logical, we need to tell you that these are mitzvahs, and therefore it's included right after Shavuos to indicate that everything is a mitzvah. Even the Bein Adam Chaveru is there, and with its rules and with its and its mandates that Hashem has created. To emphasize this point, that how man can sink to the lowest of levels, even though it's so logical that we have to be kind and good to our fellow man. Rav Mordechai Kamenetsky cites a story. There are probably thousands of stories like this, but in his book, Parsha Parables, thank you, Parsha Parables, he mentions the following story. When the Allied troops were gaining on the Nazis at the end of World War II, and the Nazis knew that their end was near, and that that victory was elusive for them, they would not be able to claim a victory. So at that point, they realized that they had to conceal all the atrocities that they were doing, and they had to move away all of the inmates from the concentration camps, that they shouldn't be found there, bring them back to Germany. So bring them from Poland, from the concentration camps in Poland to Germany. And many died, and they had what was called the Death March. They went by foot, and many died on this trek. And anybody who wanted to stop and just catch his breath, they would shoot him on the spot. There was one person by name Elimelech Kinderlehrer. And this Elimelech was so exhausted that he felt he needed to take a few minutes to regain his strength. So he pleaded with the Nazi policemen, the guards, to give him a few moments. Miraculously, they consented, something very atypical, they consented. But they warned him that if he doesn't catch up with the group, then they will come after him and they will shoot him on the spot. So he stayed behind, and as soon as the group was out of sight, he ran away. And he found a shack, and in the shack there was a haystack, and he crawled under the haystack. As soon as he did that, he heard a ferocious dog on the outside barking ferociously. Apparently, he didn't see the dogs didn't see him, and he got into the shack. Then he hears two voices of two Nazi guards. And they were coming to look for him. And one said to the other, "Where is the Jewish swine? He must be hiding in the shack." All of a sudden, they heard the thunderous barking of the dog. And they were afraid. They said, the other one said, "He can't be in the shack. The dog would have killed him. There's no way that he could be in that shack." The other one said, "Well, maybe not, maybe yes. Let's kill the dog, shoot the dog, and then we'll go into the shack and search for Elimelech." The other one looked incredulously at him. "Shoot the dog? How could you not have compassion on the dog? Did the dog do anything to you? The dog didn't do you any harm. Why would you want to kill the dog?" So the two of them agreed. Of course, we can assume the dog, that he's not in the shack, and they didn't want to kill the dog, and they left. Ultimately, that Elimelech was saved by the British army that came through. But the point being that here you have people who understand that you have to have compassion, and one of them is chiding the other for his lack of compassion. But at the very same time that they have compassion for the dog, they have lost their sensitivity to a human being. So a person can sink, even though we would seem to think that our logic dictates to us how to behave to another human being. People can lose it, and what keeps them on the straight and the narrow is the fact that the Torah tells us what to do and how to do it. There's a Malbim in Parshas Vayera. In Parshas Vayera, Avraham Avinu was going to Gerar, and his wife, and he was afraid his wife would be taken to Avimelech, who was the king, as she had already been taken to Paro. And he said to the guards, when they approached Gur, that this is my sister, and he didn't want to say she was his wife. She was taken by the guards to the palace of Avimelech. Hashem made a plague on the palace, on the people of the palace. No one touched her. And that night, Avimelech had a dream that this is the wife of Avram, and return her, or else, and he will daven for you on your behalf that you'll get better. So there it says that when Avimelech confronted Avram the next day, he said to Avram, why did you do this? Mara Isaac, your sister, said, why did you do this? Why did you say your wife was really your sister and put us all in peril? So Avram Avinu's answer was that, Ki Amarti, because I said to myself, Rak ein yiras Elokim b'makom hazeh. There is no fear of God in this place. V'haraguni al dvar ishti, and they will kill me for the sake of my wife. So he puts the word Rak ein yiras Elokim. There is no fear of God here. So the Malbim points out, what does the word only mean? So the Malbim says what Avram Avinu was saying, that he recognized that the place of Gur, where Avimelech was king, was a civilized place, was a place that took care of its own. They had a culture which was a very high culture for the time. They had all of the institutions that are necessary to provide for all those people who are needy and all those people who cannot provide for themselves. There was a Chevra Kadisha, and there was a free loan society. They had everything they needed. But there was one thing they didn't have. Having all that they had, but the one thing they didn't have was Yiras Elokim. They didn't have fear of God. So said Avram Avinu, you can have all of those things. But if you're missing fear of Hashem, Yiras Elokim, then ultimately your passions will get the better of you, and you will ultimately stoop to the level of killing me for the sake of my wife. Because everything that you have may be wonderful, but when push comes to shove, and you want something very desperately, you will sink to the lowest of levels. So that is why Torah also, the learning of Torah, the BaOmer is dictated by the Torah. Now the last part and the last third of this period is all about learning of Torah, which is Megadalto, Maramto, Kolamaisim, which elevates every person who learns Torah. He becomes godly, he becomes closer to Hashem, becomes more moral. So I just want to mention, just for a few minutes, in the few minutes I have left, I'd like to point out the following. That in the last, that we think that there's, in our society, in the last number of months, maybe a little bit more, we have seen things that have been going on in our society where the ideas and concepts which have been universally embraced were being randomly torn apart and done away with. Things that were thought of as being unshakable, unimpeachable, things that who would think otherwise, all of those things that we thought who would think otherwise, people are now thinking otherwise. And therefore, we see all sorts of ideas that have crept into the modern mind. Patriotism and love of land, love of country, this has been denigrated all over the United States for sure. The idea, the concept that you can have a functional society without policemen ensuring the safety of the citizenry, that idea has disappeared. It's preposterous. You can think, and Mishnah tells us in Avos that it's impossible to have such a society. And this is people think you can have a society that will run and be functional and be safe without police. You can have demonstrations which are not peaceful, and vandalism and criminal activity, and without being punished and being even encouraged. Now, we have to realize that the secular society has tremendous chachma, tremendous knowledge. The knowledge that has accrued over the centuries, one piece of knowledge being built on top of another piece of knowledge, has created things that are breathtaking. In technology, the rapid advance of technology and the levels to which technology has gone is really miraculous. It's not to be believed. But at the very same time that all that chachma exists in the secular society, there's a paucity, a scarcity of das. It means there's no understanding of what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong, what is up and what is down, what is white and what is black. Everything has been confused. All the rational teachings of the last centuries, the philosophical debates, the advancement in ethics, where has it brought us? It has brought us closer to Sodom and Amorah. We're going back in history. And, moreover, there is a notion which is being espoused, that a person is not necessarily what the Rebbeinu Shem created him to be, but he can choose what he wants to be. And as Rabbi Chaim Waxman said at the Aguda convention, if you are puzzled by this idea, then you are immoral and you are intolerant. This is where the das, the wisdom of the world has gotten us to. The wisdom of the Torah, the das of the Torah is impeccable. The das of the Torah is objective, and it's a standard that doesn't change and doesn't shift. And therefore, we have to rededicate ourselves at this time for Shavuos to all parts of Torah, to the Torah, of course, that dictates to us how to serve Hashem, the Torah that dictates to us how to deal with our fellow man, and the Torah for the Torah's sake, to elevate ourselves, to make ourselves godly, to connect with the Rebbeinu Shalom, to have an objective standard of morality, and that is truly the only morality that will last and will continue, is when it's dictated and by Hashem how to do it and what to do it and how we should think and what is right and what is wrong. My bracha, our tefillah actually, that the day should come, the much proclaimed day by Yeshaya Hanavi, Umolar's Deus Hashem Kamayim Liyom Echasim. That day should come soon with the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, when the world will be full of das. Das meaning that there will be understanding what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad. And on that day we will see the Yad Hashem fully and rejoice in Hashem's coming.
Okay, the rest of the evening is not really that complicated. Mendy Weiner and Company is going to play music for us. Alex is going to provide us with his food. One announcement, there's 2 buffets identical outside. Please, one on the right for the men, one on the left for the women. Interspersed throughout the evening, during the music, when people are enjoying, we're going to hear a couple of divrei Torah from some of the Kollel rabbis. Enjoy the fires, enjoy the food, enjoy the water, enjoy the music. Thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
שוב השם את שביסנו כאפיקים בנגב שוב השם את שביסנו כאפיקים בנגב Zoirim bedima, bedima, berina. Zoirim bedima, bedima, berina. Zoirim bedima, berina, yekzoiro. אשריכם ישראל, אשריכם, אשריכם, אשריכם ישראל, לפני מי אתם תרמים את הארצכם, לפני מי אתם תרמים את הארצכם, אביכם שבשמיים, אביכם שבשמיים, אביכם שבשמיים, אביכם שבשמיים. Thank you. Yoich Shlomo and Mendy.
Kishoshana beinachoch, Kishoshana beinachoch, Kerayasi beinabano. Kishoshana beinachoch, Kishoshana beinachoch. Kishoshana bein achoichi, Kena Yossi bein abana. Kishoshana bein achoichi, Kishoshana bein achoichi, Kena Yossi bein abana. Kishoshana bein achoichi, Kishoshana bein achoichi, Kena Yossi bein abana. Kishoshana bein achochi, Kishoshana bein achochi, Kena Yossi.
Good evening.
Havana.
The Makubal Reb Osher Zelig Margulis writes, if one cannot visit Meron on Lag BaOmer, he should at least study the teachings of Reb Shimon ben Yochai, which are scattered throughout the Talmud and the Medrash. In that vein, let us visit the Gemara in Yuma, Ayin Vav and Aleph. The students of Reb Shimon ben Yochai asked him, when the Yidden were in the Midbar for 40 years, every day they waited, or they didn't wait, but they got their food every morning on a day anew. Why didn't Hashem just give them a stock 1 year at a time? They would be confident, relaxed, a full year's supply of man. Reb Shimon responded with a mashal, a parable to a king who had an only child. And every year he would supply his son with the necessary funds for sustenance. Consequently, the son would only visit him once a year. And so when the father changed his custom and started providing his son with sustenance on a daily basis, to no surprise, the son visited him as well on a daily basis. Which might make some of you think twice before giving a credit card to your children when you send them off. So the Yidden in the Midbar Now that every day they finished their food, their cupboards were empty, they would wonder, how will we survive in the wilderness? And that caused them to turn their hearts to their Father in heaven. The following story illustrates this point quite aptly. Reb Nosson Nata, the famed author of the Megillah Amukos, was the Rav in Krakow in the early part of the 17th century. Although it was a very prestigious position, the demands of the community were quite taxing, and it left him little time for his life's passion, the study of Torah. And therefore, when a smaller city offered him to become their Rav, he readily agreed. As much as the people in Krakow tried to convince him, his decision was made. And as the Rav, the Megillah Amukos, was bidding farewell to his beloved community in Krakow, a fellow Yid ran up to him and said, please, just one last din Torah. Please preside over one last court case. Of course, he agreed. And the two litigants, one was a businessman and one was a bagel vendor. And the businessman begins. He says, my business causes me to travel quite often. And one time, I'm in the horse and buggy station, and I'm hungry, I'm very hungry, about to leave on a journey. So I see another Yid at a bagel stand, so I go and purchase the bagel, and we get into a discussion. What's the proper bracha on a bagel? Is it mezainis? Is it hamaitzi? And the bagel vendor, with astounding clarity, brought several proofs to what the bracha was. Doesn't say in the story which bracha it was, but he brought several proofs to what the bracha was in the bagel. One can only imagine what his proofs would be on what bracha one could make an artisan pizza. Anyway, the businessman said, why is a Talmud Chacham like you selling bagels? You belong in the Beis Medrash. He said, okay, but I must provide for my family. So the businessman says, no problem. I'll pay you double what you earn, and you go learn, with the stipulation that you study with my son. And so it happened. The arrangement was working out quite well, and the businessman had to go on a 3-week trip. So he goes over to the Talmud Chacham, the former bagel vendor, and he pays him his 3 weeks' salary in advance. He comes back from his trip, hungry again, back in the horse and buggy station. And he goes to buy a bagel, and to his chagrin and dismay, the person who he was paying to study Torah is selling bagels. And I yelled at him. He didn't respond, so here he is at a court case, the last one the Megillah Amukos will preside over. And so the bagel vendor says, everything the man says is true, and of course the money I was planning on giving back to him. Well, you see, when I sold bagels every day before I left to work, my wife and I would pray, would daven, that we managed to sell at least enough to carry us through the day. And at the end of the week, if we had enough money for Shabbos, we were elated. Our days were filled with tefillah that we should have enough money, and thanks when we did have enough. But now, with a new position, he gets his wages, his salary in advance. This job that he's taken has driven Hashem out of our lives. And I told him he better go back to selling bagels. And the Megillah Amukos said, unload the wagon. I'm remaining in Krakow, a city that has people like the bagel vendor and his wife. May we merit to inculcate in ourselves the teachings of Reb Shimon ben Yochai and use our daily blessings as a means to connect to Hashem every day anew. Thank you.
Join us, Let's go. We know that in Lashon HaKodesh, in the Jewish language, if two words that have the same numerical value, the same gematria, and even more so if they share the same letters, that means that they share a similarity, an inherent, they have a certain inherent similarity, a connection. There's two words. The word a bridge in Lashon HaKodesh is a gesher. Gesher is a bridge. A feeling is regesh. These two words, regesh and gesher, are the same letters. They're just scrambled differently. What's the connection? We know that a person, when we have ideals, we have hashkafa, we have thoughts in our mind, not always do our actions mirror our hashkafas, the way we view things. And the reason is simple, because what drives our actions is not our mind, but it's our heart. The heart is our actions are driven by our heart, the feelings of our heart. When we have ideas and they come into feeling, the regesh in our heart, that bridges our ideals, and it bridges into the action. They serve as a bridge. That's what a bridge is. They connect the one place to the other. I'd like to share a story which brings out this idea of regesh. in the early 1950s, there was a well-to-do businessman, a manufacturer who lived in Detroit, and he had his one daughter, and this daughter was going out with a boy, but this boy wasn't Jewish. And the father, this businessman, was distraught that his daughter was looking to marry someone out of the Jewish nation, and he tried to convince her, go out with this boy, go out with someone else. But she was set that she said she wants to marry this boy. As this is going on, this businessman had a business trip in Chicago. And when he was in Chicago, he ended up in a shul, and he noticed a handsome, a good-looking young man. And he was curious about him, and he inquired about him, and he found out that he was a greener, he was a Holocaust survivor, his family was wiped out, and he ended up in Chicago. And he had an epiphany. He said, if I could convince this man to come with me to Detroit, maybe he'll agree. He has no family anyways. I'll give him a job in my factory, and maybe my daughter will be willing to go out with him. And so he did that. He comes with him to Detroit, and the father tells the girl, I have this boy, I want you to go out with him. Good-looking boy, please go out with him. She says, Dad, I'll go out with him once, but if I'm not interested, I'm just one time and that's it. Fine. She goes out, she comes back to her father, Dad, I'm not interested. The father's distraught. The father had one last idea, and ultimately this girl, they made up a date, she's going to get married to this non-Jew in a year's time. The father says, you know what, one last thing. I'll pay for it, a free trip. Go to Eretz Yisrael for a week or two, go see the holy sites, go to the Kollel, go to different places. He was hoping that maybe that would stir up in her a connection to her Yiddishkeit. Okay? She goes to Eretz Yisrael, and she had indeed a nice trip. And highlight, she goes to the Kollel, and it happened to be that while she was there, it was Lag BaOmer. And of course, she ended up in Meron. And while she was in Meron, the dancing and the singing, and specifically the song, Bar Yochai, something about it, it just connected. She just had stirred up in her tremendous feelings. And she had this feeling of connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu at that moment. And she even asked someone for a siddur, and she davened, and she poured out her heart, and she had a tremendous connection at that moment. And the person, and she was finished, the person said, keep the siddur. Okay. She finishes her trip, she comes back to Detroit. But you know the way things go, when she came back to real life, she says to her father, it was a very nice trip and everything, but I'm marrying my friend. Okay? A year later, it's a week before her wedding, and she's going on a walk in the streets of Detroit, and she so happened to pass by the house of a Yerushalmi Yid. What is a Yerushalmi Yid doing in Detroit then? It's a good question. This Yid came from Yerushalayim to bring a parnasa for his family, he was a sheikhet, and his name was a Pshraga Feitel Kahana. He was my wife's great-grandfather. And it was his minig to sing, and while she was passing by, it so happened to be that the window of his house was open. And it so happened to be that at that moment, he was singing the song, Bar Yochai Nimshachta Ashrecha Shemen Sasayin Mechaverecha. And she stopped, and she's listening to this song, the song that, and it all came back, all those emotions that she had a year before. It came back, that connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu came right back at her a week before the wedding. And she just, her feelings, she went to her friend and she says, I'm sorry, I'm breaking the engagement, we're not getting married. And she ultimately married the war survivor. The story doesn't end there. While she was engaged, her chassan and kala, with the war survivor, one day he comes to spend time with her, they're schmoozing, and he says, I didn't have a mincha. Do you have a siddur I could borrow? She says, I actually have a siddur. She gives him a siddur. He opens it up, and he faints. he wakes up. So what's going on? He says, I thought my entire family was lost in the war. And the name in this siddur is my brother. And they got married. Ultimately, he reconnected with his brother. This story is loaded with hashgacha pratis. But we see from here how this girl, through the regesh, the feeling that she had, it brought to her actions, and it changed her eternity. And Lag BaOmer is a time, see, during the days of Sphira, hopefully we're somewhat thinking and coming to higher levels in our das, like the Kollel said, in our mind, hashkafa. On Lag BaOmer, with the music and the song of Lag BaOmer, the music, we listen to music, that could bring it to bridge our thoughts and our ideals and to elevate our actions. Good evening.
לפני שולחן נרצה די שטרה שמרשי כויסי ריביה אך טוב החסד יפוני כל ימי חיי ושבתי בנס השם Samba, that's what I chose. I'm the crowd. That's what I'm doing. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you,
I'm
Shlomo.
proud. That's for
Orchestrated by Shlomo Schneider.
Good. David. Good. Moose. Wow. It's great. It's great. We were all witness to that. We were all witness to that.
Will never
We
happen
might be the
again.
only witnesses to that.
Will never happen again. Chaim, well, let's do that one. Let's do it. Do a little higher. Do it up. Go ahead.
Don't tell them to come
Jumped
back.
it, jumped it.
We gotta get that to Nathan. We gotta get that to Nathan.
Fantastic. Fantastic. About 250. Insanely good.
Supposed to be shy, but I'm Moshe. Moshe Bar Yaakov. Yerushalayim Abduya. Moose, one more time, Moose.
When you guys come up for an autograph, not everyone at once. Just not everyone at once. Line up, single file.